Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Mem Gimel, 43 in Masechet Avodah Zarah. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. We are in the middle of discussing dracons, which again Jastro translates as either a dragon or a boa constrictor. And although from what we're going to see this morning, dragon sort of fits better. At least the classic pictures of dragons with something along its spine, because that's what we're going to cover right now. And again, the issue is that we're dealing with on our Mishnah items that have been found, and if they have the image of a moon or a sun or or a dracon, then you're not allowed to benefit from it. You have to throw it into the Yam Hamelach. And of course, they knew that the Yam Hamelach was, had salt in it, or was immediately cause a decomposition of pretty much anything that you threw in it. And destroy anything that you threw in it. So it was a good place that when rabbis needed to throw something that needed to be destroyed, and didn't want anybody to benefit from it, that was a great place to throw stuff into. Okay, so we are now on at the two dots, 11 lines down on Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, Tan Rabbanan. So Tan Rabbanan, rabbis taught in a brisa. Again, this is a brisa that details what the story is with this dracon. Ezu tzuras dracon. What is a figure of a dracon? So Perish Rabbi Yishimon ben Elazar kol sheyesh lo tzitzin ben prakav. It's got to be some kind of creature that has tzitzin between its joints. So prakav can mean a lot of different things. Prakav perek can be what you learn, a chapter. It can mean the refer to the learning on Shabbos. It can refer to a number of different items. Here, Rashi helps us out. First with tzitzin, second of the narrow lines in Rashi. Targum shel snapir. That's the Aramaic translation of fins. And so, lashon acher, but then there's another interpretation, kamo sarot, some kind of hair. So, certainly when we think about it from a dragon perspective, it makes much more sense to talk about the fins. And you think about a dragon, often they have sort of the bumps along its spine, and that's what we're talking about. And indeed, when Rashi now goes on, the next Rashi, Parakab, Chaliosab, it's referring to the vertebrae. So as a result, one can understand that we're talking about the bumps that effectively, essentially some kind of fins that are on that are along the vertebrae of the creature, and that really does fit nicely with what we with what we well with with the dinosaur. You don't have too many of those bumps. I guess there are certain dinosaurs that have the bumps.
Yeah, that's
But
really
right, but yeah, 100%. Now we need one of those kids who like reads all the dinosaur books to tell us which dinosaur we're talking
we
about.
had some little models in
Yes,
there.
exactly, 100%. But they've cleaned things up. So exactly.
In modern medical Hebrew, prakim refer to joints.
Yes, that's how I translated it to begin with, was the word joints. That's exactly right. And so that's why I start with joints and then utilize Rashi to tell us that it's referring to the vertebrae. So you're absolutely right. Okay, so Machave Rabbi Yasi ben Parke, excuse me, Machave Rabbi Asi ben Pirkei Tzavar, and he would point to the vertebrae of the neck in order to show exactly what he was referring to. So, of course, when I think of a dragon, I think of those bumps all along its vertebrae, down even to its tail. But in any event, the point is that it's got to have some kind of a fin or something special along its vertebrae. Okay, so Amar Rabbi Chama Rabbi Chanina halacha Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, that the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, namely, and Rashi tells us what is it trying to tell us with this. So halacha Rabbi Shimon she'im ein lo tzitzin mutar. So if in fact you just draw a snake and which doesn't have any bumps on it, well, then that's not going to be a problem whatsoever. So that's the story. It's only if you have a dragon that it would be that we need to, the vessel would need to be thrown into the Yam HaMelech. Amar Rabbi Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Pamachas Hayiti Mahalech Acha Rabbi Lazar Kapar Beribi Bederech. Listen, one time I was traveling. This is Rabbi Bar Chana speaking in the name of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. So this is Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi who was traveling, and he says he was once traveling on the road, walking behind Rabbi Lazar Kapar Beribi. Now Beribi, Rashi tells us. Oh, I'm sorry.
Adam,
Yeah,
Adam
Beribi,
Gadol.
Kolomar Adam Gadol. And this was a sort of like a nickname that they would use in order to, for somebody important. And so Rabbi Lazar Akabar was considered somebody important like that. Umatza Sham Tabas, and he found a ring. And Rashi tells us, next Rashi, the lo higbiyah. He did not, however, lift it up. We're going to see that eventually he's going to get a non-Jew to nullify the nature of that ring, of the idolatrous nature of that ring. And so that's going to be how he's going to be able to take it. But he finds a ring, ve'aleh tzuras drakon, and on it was a drakon. And so as a result, he would have to throw it into the Yam HaMelech if he picked it up. Umatza ovid kochavim katan. So he's walking around, or he's waiting there by the ring on the ground, and he sees a minor idol worshiper, meaning an idol worshiper who's below the age of majority. Below Amar Lo Klum. So he doesn't say anything to him. Matza ovid kochavim gadol. Then he finds an adult idol worshiper. V'amar Lo batla. Nullify this ring. Decree that this ring is no longer an idol from your perspective. The low bitla, but he refused to nullify it. So staro, so he slapped him, as Rashi tells us. Staro, he ko al halachi. He hit him on his cheek. Uvitla, and then the guy nullified it. So shmamina tla. So we can learn three different things from this story. Shmamina ovid kochavim mevatel ovodas kochavim shalo v'shel chaveiro. So first of all, the guy did not say that this was my ring and pick it up and take it. So as a result, it's clear that he can nullify not only his own idols, but idols that belong to somebody else. Ushmamina yodea b'tiv shel avodas kochavim u'misham esheha mevatel. And also, we know that a child is not going to be sufficient. You need to be somebody who understands idolatry and the accessories that are used with it in order to be able to nullify the idol. But a minor child who doesn't have that experience is not able to nullify the idol. So that's lesson number 2. And finally, because Rabbi Lazar Kapar was able to force the idol worshiper to nullify the idol, we see that even an idol worshiper who nullifies an idol under duress, one might have thought that that is not sufficient, and that is not considered nullification. That is, in fact, sufficient. Okay, so there we have 3 different rules that we learned from this story.
And
So,
what is the halacha l'maaseh hayom? You see something on the ground. Let's say it's a cross, or it's something like that. It's surat, something that may be Hindu, Buddha, whatever it may be. Are you allowed to pick it up? You move it, you throw it in the garbage, or what? Or you're not? You have to find a goy to pick it up.
that is an excellent question. First of all, with respect to the cross, if it's a cross that's like a chain or something like that, I believe that there is a Rav Moshe's decision that sort of the jewelry that they wear is not considered an idol itself. And so as a result, they don't actually worship those items. So that would probably be okay to lift. And we're going to see in a moment that if you find something where lots of people, in fact, that's what the exact next topic that we're going to do, that you can keep it. So if it's a golden cross and you find it out on, on the boundaries of the Henry Hudson Parkway. So then, absolutely, you can take it and keep it, and go over to Brown's Jewelers and sell it to him and see if he'll buy it for you for whatever gold it's worth.
But don't you have to announce when you found something?
So not, yes, ordinarily, if you find
You
it,
gotta-
if you find it in a
There's the
in a
common
place
area.
but if you find it in a place where somebody may have left it or somebody may have lost it, then you. But if you find it in a place where no one is ever expecting to ever get it back, then you do not have to announce it. That's the main difference. So if you find it in the corner somewhere, even if it's in public, it's in a corner somewhere. So maybe the guy lost it, but has reasonable chance of getting it back. So then you should leave it, or pick it up and announce it. But well, if you think that he actually left it there on purpose, then you should leave it for sure. But if in fact you think that he lost it, then you can pick it up and announce it. And certainly, if you find something like in a shul, then you should announce it. Exactly. Okay, but in any event, the bottom line is with respect to sort of other kinds of idols, you're absolutely right. You probably should not pick it up. If it's a true idol, then you should not. You should leave it where it is. So, because if you pick it up, then it can no longer be nullified, and so as a result, that's going to be a problem. But in any event, I wonder whether you could follow Rabbi Lazar HaKapar's advice, but I wouldn't advise slapping somebody in order to encourage them to nullify the idol. Okay, but in any event, Megadef ba Rabbi Chanina was upset about this. V'lei slay Rabbi Lazar HaKapar baribi had tanan. But 1 second, doesn't Rabbi Lazar HaKapar, who is a baribi again, meaning that he's an Adam Gadol, doesn't he believe in the following brisa? Hamatzel min ha'ari. If you save something from a lion, umina dove, or from a bear, umina namer, or from a leopard, umina gais, or from an invading army, umina nahar, or from a river, umizoto shalyam, or from a high tide, umishaluliosav shal nahar, or from a river surge, hamodzi b'saracha ufalacha gdola, or if you find it in a major thoroughfare or in a large public square, anywhere where you're going to have lots and lots and lots of people there. So in all those locations, hare elu shalo, then you get to keep it. Because we know for sure that the owner despaired. Well, since this owner lost this item in a big main thoroughfare, and so as a result, he certainly despaired of ever getting it back. And indeed, that's why Rabbi Lazar Kapar is going to assume that he can take it and keep it for himself. Why was it needed to be nullified? Isn't the abandonment of hope of ever getting it back sufficient? As Rashi says, Misyayish mehen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 lines down in the narrow lines of Rashi. Misyayish mehen, B'kevan de Yayish Ovid Kochavim, because the non-Jew, the idol worshiper, the idolater, has given up hope. But it has gone out of his mind, meaning it is effectively nullified. Delo mifalcha, he's never going to worship again. Visu lo tzarach lebetula, and so as a result, it shouldn't need any further nullification. So that's the question that Rabbi Chanina is asking. So Amar Abaye responds, Nehi de mina miyash. Yes, he was certainly abandoning hope of ever getting the item itself back. But does he despair of the nature of the prohibition? Meaning, Rashi tells us, next Rashi, Adayin ha'ovid kochavim she'ivda korela ovodas kochavim. The idolater who lost it will still consider this an idol. Demeimar Amar, because he's going to say the Chulu, as Rashi, and Rashi's referring to the next line in the Gemara. So we go back into the next line in the Gemara. Meimar Amar, and now just so that we know where we are in the Gemara, we are the beginning, the first word on the line, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines up of the narrow lines in the Gemara. Meimar Amar, Nehi Demina, Meimar Amar, lost my place. If an idolater finds the ring, great. he's gonna miflach palachla. He'll worship it, right? If
Yeah.
and another idolater finds it, he'll do what I do. And Yisrael mishkachala. And if a Jew finds it, what's the Jew gonna do? Aidi de dameh yikarim, because it's nice, it's a beautiful idol and it's expensive with jewels in it, etc. Mizabin lay la'ovid kochavim. He'll certainly sell it to another idolater, ufalachla, and it'll end up being worshipped. So no matter what I do, even though I've lost this item and I won't expect to get it back, I can expect that it will be continued to be worshipped. And therefore, I am not going to nullify it. I'm only despairing of ever recovering it. And therefore, that is why Rabbi Lazar HaKapar needed to find an idolater in order to nullify it.
Practical application. You find you're in your building or your co-op or your condo, and you find a cross in the hallway.
Uh-huh.
Shouldn't you pick it up and return it to the
Yes,
front desk?
absolutely. You
Right.
can absolutely pick it up and return it to the front desk. And again, that's based in part on the fact that that a cross is not an item that worshipped. If you actually find like a real Buddha or something like that, then you should probably call the front desk, a super, and say, "Listen, I found this. You can pick it up and take it
Gotcha.
to whomever it is." Okay, so now we're at the two dots on Mem Gimel Amud Aleph. And the Gemara quotes another Mishnah that appears to contradict the Baraisa that we cited yesterday that prohibits making images of celestial bodies. So the question is the following: Tanan Hasam, Demus Tsuros Levanos Hayalo the Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel had pictures of images of the various shapes.
I'm
Sorry?
just thinking. I'm. I don't mean to disrupt this, but I'm just think there are people I've encountered throughout the years, missionaries who shove pamphlets in your face and so forth. They hand them when you're walking in. It's not Avodah Zarah. I mean, it's pamphlet, but so some people have suggested, I've heard this before, that it's better to take it and destroy it and throw it out than to just say thank you very much and keep walking. That's some people. That's one opinion. Other people say just keep walking and ignore them. There are different ways of dealing with that.
Yeah, look, I mean, it reminds me of the question. You may remember that we saw in the Gemara. I apologize that I can't give you the Maseches and Daf that we saw it in, but we saw the case of the two rabbis who were trying to figure out which way should we go. Should we pass the place of Avodah Zarah, or should we pass the place of prostitution? And they ended up going past the place of prostitution, and the women all hid, and so as a result, everything was fine. But the point is that so to the extent that you have any temptation whatsoever to read the materials, etc., I would suggest that you should walk by it.
I say thank you.
Exactly. And it's no thank you is a perfect response. If on the other hand, this is not of any interest to you, and you can take it away, and so that as a result, now one fewer person is going to get a pamphlet. So then I understand the perspective that you're saying that maybe we can save somebody by having them have one fewer pamphlet. Okay, so again, Tanan Hasam, Demus Tsuros Levanos Hayulo Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel had these pictures of the moons, these carvings of the moon. Baliaso B'Tavla B'Kotel. He had them in his attic. He had it on a tablet. He had it on the wall. Not clear whether that's one item or two or three items, but in any event, the bottom line is that he had these images. Shibahen Mares Ahedjot. He would show them to regular folks. Omer Lahen, who obviously we're going to see that those regular folks were coming to him in court to testify about the existence of a new moon. And so he would use these images to say, was the moon like this? Was the moon like that? Etc. Because the new moon has a certain direction to it. It has to be on a certain size. It's only the new moon if it's in that direction, and if it's in the other direction, it's actually just before the end of the moon. It's got to be right. The new moon is when the moon effectively when the sun effectively passes from the perspective of Earth, passes the moon in its orbit, and so as a result, no, it's not the full. It's a
the
brand
crescent?
new. It's a crescent moon,
The crescent
and the
moon.
crescent has got to be at the bottom of the moon, so that it's the moon is always
Yes.
facing the sunny part of the moon is always facing the sun, naturally, the light lit part of the moon. And so as a result, when the crescent always has to be towards the bottom of the moon to indicate that the sun has now is now past it, and then the moon is going to be effectively rising relative to the sun, and so as a result, it'll be getting larger and larger. So the point is that Omer Lahen, and he would say to them, Kazera item, oh Kazera item. Did you see it like this, or did you see it like that? And that way, Rabbi Gamliel would know, was this person actually seeing a new moon or the old moon, or did he see something completely different? Maybe it was some other kind of lunar or experience. So umishari, but one second, is that permitted? V'haksiv lo sasun iti. Now we're going to quote a series of brises. And we'll eventually get to the brisa that was very explicit, that I believe we saw the other day, that said specifically you can't create the moon and the sun. But right now we're quoting other versions of that brisa that don't actually mention that you can't create the moon and the sun. So v'haksiv lo sasun iti, you shouldn't make something with me. Lo sasun kidmus shamashai Hamishamshim lefanai. You should not make images of the servants that serve before me. That's and Rashi points out here, Hacha lo garsinim b'marom. There's no specific reference in this brisa to it being a heavenly body. But so as a result, we're going to provide an answer, an initial answer. And then we'll be asking questions on that answer by identifying additional brises, and we'll finally end up with an alternative answer. So Amar Abaye, lo asra Torah ela shemashin she'efshar la'asos kamosan. No, what is prohibited by the Torah when it says et, making my servants, it's making something, an image of something, where you actually have the ability to replicate it. So Keditanya, as we have in the following brisa, lo yasa adam bias tavnis heichal, achsadra tavnis ulam, chadzer tavnis azara, shulchan tavnis shulchan, menorah tavnis menorah. What can you not do? You can't make a house that looks like the Beis Hamikdash, looks like the main sanctuary of the house of the Beis Hamikdash, meaning where the shulchan is located, where the menorah is located, where the mizbeach hazahav is located. You can't make your house look like that. Achsadra tavnis ulam, and you can't make a pavilion that looks like the ulam. The ulam is the wide opening structure that is just at the opening of the heichal, of the sanctuary itself. So you can't make that. Chatzar tavnis azar, you can't make a courtyard that looks like the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash, and you can't make a table that looks like the table of the Beis Hamikdash, and you can't make a candelabra that looks like the menorah of the Beis Hamikdash. So, but what can you do? Aval hu osa shel chamisha v'shel shisha v'shel shmona. Well, the candelabra that is in the Beis Hamikdash, the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, unlike the menorah that we use on Hanukkah, which is referred to as a Chanukiah, that menorah had 7 arms to it. So you can make a menorah that has 5, 6, or 8 different arms to it, but you can't make the Shel Shiva Lo Yaseh, but you can't make a 7-arm menorah. And if you go into any shul, and you'll often see shuls that have 7 branched menorahs, like with lights at the top, you'll notice that almost all of them will have one of the lights replaced with like a Magen David or something else, in order to indicate, because they don't want to make a replica, even though it doesn't have all the features of it. The bottom line is if you have 7 lamps, that's going to be a problem.
How do we explain these the models of the Beit HaMikdash and Holy Land in Israel and the various models that people have constructed in different places? The whole, it's very lifelike, and I mean lifelike. It seems very similar to the Beit HaMikdash.
So so if you're talking about like the small models there are questions about whether or not you can do that. Absolutely. And it's not necessarily clear. Indeed, even there is, of course, the group that sort of is trying to make the kalim of the Beis Hamikdash so that they're ready. And even there, you can argue that it may be problematic. So you're absolutely right. And I'm not saying that it's permitted at all. And even if you use a different kind of metal, so it's not made out of gold. And Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda Omer, af shel eitz lo yasa, not just metal, but even if it's wood. And how do I know that wood can be a problem? Because Kederach she'asu beis Chashmonai, because when the Chashmonaim went back in and needed to restart everything was destroyed. They didn't have the wealth in order to start with a gold menorah. And so as a result, they set up a wood menorah. Amrulo, but the rabbi said, Misham Raya, what are you talking about? That's not actually proof, because they didn't start with a wooden menorah. Shapudim shel barzel hayu. It was iron based of the arms of the menorah were iron. V'chopin bebats. And then they plated it with tin, shiru. And then when they got a little wealthier, asaum shel kesef, they made it out of silver. Chazru ve'eshiru, they got even wealthier. Asaum shel zahav, they made it of gold. So it was never made out of wood. So actually, a wood menorah you can make. And so as a result, so I don't know what materials they're using in all of the things that they're doing, but if they make it out of wood and paint it, well, then maybe that is one of the bases for them doing it. The other thing is that remember that that you can't make a house that's like a sanctuary and a pavilion that's like like the ulam. And so as a result, it could be that if it's so small that it's not possible to use as those items, so then also maybe that would be the argument that it's going to be permitted. Again, I'm not paskening, but that would be my thinking as to why it might be allowed. Okay. V'shamshin she'i efshar la'asos kamosam mishari. 1 second. So again, our first answer is that Rabbi Gamliel could have them because they are not things that we have the ability to replicate. We cannot make a moon. We cannot make a sun. And so as a result, that's why we're allowed to do it. But 1 second, the Gemara asks, are you really telling me that you're not allowed to make something that cannot be actually replicated? V'hatanya, we got another brisa, lo tasuniti, again, based on the same pasuk. This is Shmos, Parakaf, Pasuk Kaf, that you're not allowed to make something with me. Lo sasun kidmus shamashai shamasham lefanai b'marom. You shouldn't make any image of the servants who serve me on high. So again, this time we've added the word on high, and that suggests that in fact the moon and the sun, which are servants on high, and so as a result, they are also going to be prohibited. So Amar Abai says, no, not so fast. Even that Baraisa doesn't do it for you, because lo asra Torah, as we turn to Men Gimel Amabet, lo asra Torah, elabidumus arba panim bahadi hadadi. It's only the 4 faces of the chariot of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. As Rashi says, arba panim, first Rashi on Men Gimel Amabet, pnei shor, the face of an ox, v'adam, and a person, v'aryeh, and a lion, v'nesher, and an eagle, l'chaya achat, for in one creature, dugmas chayos hakodesh. It's this holy chaya that existed. Diksiv et. It says, with me, hashruyot etzlai, who's serving near me. And why do I say that? Elamiata parts of Adam l'chudei tishterei. But 1 second, in that case, why not allow the picture of a face, meaning of a human face? After all, if we're saying that the only thing that's prohibited is et, with me, meaning it's got to be a heavenly structure, so then it's only when you have all 4 faces of ox, human, lion, and eagle that is going to be a problem. But alamatanya, we have a brisa, kol partsufos mutarin chutz mi partsuf adam. We say specifically that a human face is prohibited. So Amar Rav Yehuda braid the Rav Yoshua mipirkei de Rabbi Yoshua shmiali. Listen, I learned from the lectures of Rabbi Yoshua. Lo sasun iti, lo sasun oti. It's not that when you say you shouldn't make make with me, it means that you shouldn't make me, meaning you shouldn't make an image of effectively God. And what is God like? We say that Adam Nivra b'Tselem Elokim. We were created in God's image. So aval shar shamashin shari. But when it comes to other servants, you can, then you would be allowed to make it. And so as a result, the point is that the human face is specifically the one that you're not allowed to make on its own, and not the other of the four faces. But the other four faces you cannot make if they are all together. Ushar shamash and
So
mishari.
what is
But
the what is the point of the distinction with marom? Earlier it didn't appear. Are those two versions of the brightness? Are
they
they
seem to
different
be two
different
different
brightness?
brises. Two different brises. One specifically refers to heavenly structures, and one does not. So when it was non-heavenly structures, that was the basis for us saying that you cannot make uh, 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 replicas of images of things that were used in the Beis Hamikdash. Because you have the ability to make the item itself, we don't want you to make any kind of replica of it. And so as a result, that's what's going to be prohibited by that Bryce's understanding of lo sasun et. But the second brisa also adds the word marom. And so as a result, it cannot refer to the Beis Hamikdash's kalim. That can't be what's prohibited, because what's being prohibited is something that is specifically heavenly. And so as a result, that's why Abaye needs to effectively change and say, well, that brisa is not prohibiting the vessels of the Beis Hamikdash or redoing the Beis Hamikdash. It's prohibiting the making the four faces of the chariot of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so that's where we are at the moment. So now the Gemara asks, Ushar Shemashin Mishari, are you allowed to make other individual heavenly bodies besides the four faces? So, Vahatanya, we have a brisa, and now we're going to see that we're going to cite more things. Lo sasun iti, lo sasun kidmus shamashai, hameshamsham lefanai b'marom. You can't make things that serve before me on high. Kagon ofanim, usrafim, v'chayos hakodesh, umalachei hashares. So here we've got a whole bunch of different items, and presumably these would also include the sun and the moon. And so how could Rabbi Gamliel allow it? After all, it specifically says kigon, such as. So what else is included? So Amar Abaye, no, it doesn't mean to include the sun and the moon. Lo asra Torah ela shamash and shimbimador ha'elyon. No, it's only in the upper heavenly bodies, upper heavenly spheres, that is going to be prohibited. As Rashi says, second line of Rashi, Kediksiv, et. It's specifically written et. Aval chama ulevana, but the sun and the moon, b'mador hatachtonheim, they are in a lower level of the heavenly spheres, and so as a result, they are permitted to make. B'shem b'mador hatachton mishari. 1 second though, you want to tell me that the lower sphere, the things that are in the lower spheres, like the sun and the moon, are permitted? V'hatanya Asher Bashamayim. We have another brisa that says that it's focused on the pasuk Perek Kaf pasuk Dalid in Shmos, where it says Lo saselecha fesel v'chol tmuna asher b'shamayim mimal v'asher ba'aretz mitachas v'asher b'mayim mitachas la'aretz. And we're going to now.
Road.
What is it from the Sarah's difference? Exactly, 100%. And so as a result, we're going to now derive certain lessons from certain of those words. We're going to stop, but then we're going to see that there's more lessons from other words in this pasuk. But let's take a look. So here we have Tanya. We got a brisa asher b'shamayim, when it says in the heavens, l'rabos chama ulavana kochavim umazolot. It comes to include that you cannot make the sun, the moon, the stars, and the constellations. Mimal. And when it says above, well, that's Larabos Malachei Ashares. That's coming to say the ministering angels. So ki tanya hahi la'ovdam. So in second, so now we have a real challenge on Rabban Gamliel, because this seems to say that you're not allowed to make these items, the sun, moon, stars, and constellations. And so as a result, how do we understand that, and understand that Rabban Gamliel had these images in, all around? So Kitanya Hahila Ovdam. No, that brisa is telling us not to worship them. 1 second though, Ila Ovdam Afilu Shilshul Katanami. But then even a tiny worm is something that you can't worship. Einochinami, you're absolutely right. Umisefe dekra navka. In fact, you learn that from the end of the verse, because the Tanya asher ba'aretz, anything that's on the land. So l'rabos yamim unaharos harim ugvos, that you cannot worship seas, rivers, mountains, and hills. And mitachas, when it says below, l'rabos shilshul katan, it tells us even the tiny worm that's underneath the level of the ground, that crawls in the underground. So va'asiya grade desa mishari. Well, in second, can you make these items? Can you make these items? Is that really permitted? Vatanya. And now we cite the brisa that we actually cited, I think, yesterday or the day before. Lo sasun iti, you cannot make with me. Lo sasun kidmus shamashai hamishamishin lifanai b'marom. You can't make images of the servants who serve before me on high. Kigon chama ulvana kochavim umazalos, like the sun, the moon, the stars, and constellations. So all the other proofs we were able to deflect and say, no worries, that's going to all be okay. Sorry for not scrolling. That's going to all be okay, because we could read into the various brisas that they prohibit the creation of other things, but not the creation of the moon and the stars. But here we have something that makes clear that the moon and the stars are not permitted, because the brisa specifically says the moon, sun, and stars are not permitted. And so as a result, we're going to offer a new approach, a new answer. So the answer is not to say that, as Abaye initially said, right? Abaye initially said that the Torah actually never prohibits that. It's now clear that there's brisas that prohibit it. So we can't answer that. So shiny Rabban Gamliel, da'cherim asulo. Nah, Rabban Gamliel is different, because he didn't make them. Somebody else made them for him. As Rashi says, Da'charim osunlo, this is third line at the top of Mem Gimel and Bet, near the end of the line. Ovdei kochavim. It was idolaters who made it for him. And so as a result, no problems whatsoever with making these images. V'ha Rav Yehuda. So in second though, what about Rav Yehuda? Da'cherim asulo, who also had a ring that others made for him. V'amrle Shmuel, Rav Yehuda, and Shmuel told him, Shinana, sharp one, Same Ene Dedain, you got to blind out its eye, meaning that he had an image on a ring of some kind of, maybe it's the dracon, that, and as a result, Shmuel told him you need to poke out its eye. So why was that a problem, and why wasn't the situation of Rabban Gamliel a problem? Hasam bechosamo bolate. There it was, the ring had a protrusion that was the image that was problematic. Mumishum chashada, and because we're worried that people might think that Rav Yehuda was worshiping this ring, the image on the ring, that's why Shmuel told him to destroy it. Titania, because we have a brisa. Tabas shechosama bolate. If you have a ring whose image sticks out, asur lahanicha, you cannot wear it. But umutar lachtomba, but you're allowed to use it as a stamp. Chosama shokeya. If, on the other hand, the ring is the image of the ring is into the ring, well then mutter lahanicha, then you can wear it. v'asar lachtom bo. But you can't use it to create, to stamp into wax, because what you end up stamping is actually now going to be a protruding image. And so as a result, that protruding image is going to be problematic because we're worried that maybe somebody will come and worship it. Do we really worry about somebody thinking that somebody is going to be worshiping it? Baha ki Beit Kanishta, we have the synagogue, the Beit Knesset, the Shaf v'Yosef in Shaf v'Yosef b'Naharda in Narda, the Okmi ba Andarta, that they had a statue of the king in it. V'havu Aile be Avu de Shmuel v'Levi umitzalu begabe, and they would go there to daven. And so as a result, how could they have gone there to daven if in fact we're worried? And so as a result, it's clear below chayshi l'chashada. We must not be worried about people thinking that you're going to worship it. Rabim shiny. No, that's in public. And therefore, that's different. Rabbi Gamliel de Yachid Haba. But 1 second, wasn't Rabbi Gamliel's situation on his own? So shouldn't we be worried about people thinking that he was going to worship these items and say that therefore he needs to make a defect in them? So no, Kevin de Nasihu, since he was the Nasi, Shchiche Rabim Gabe, lots of people were always around him. And so as a result, that's one argument as to why, even though maybe we should worry about suspicion, we're not going to worry about suspicion for Rabban Gamliel. Alternatively, the Ibayzema, de Prakim Have. Or you could say, you know what? None of the images was whole. He had to put them together.
Right.
And so only by putting them together was he able to show them to people. But ordinarily, they would become apart. And so as a result, it would not be a problem. The e-biasame.
We learned earlier that we learned earlier a couple of days ago that if there were pieces of the idol, it was still problematic, right?
So not in all situations. It was only problematic if there was still a hand or a foot. But if in fact you find something that was completely taken apart, then that would be okay. And of course, the problem is that we were worried that it was at some point worshipped. But here, the items that Rabbi Gamliel had, we know were never worshipped. And so as a result, that issue doesn't exist. The broken image doesn't exist with respect to these items. So that's another answer number 2 to this follow-up question of why wouldn't we be worried about Rabban Gamliel's situation. And then answer number 3, V'ibais ema l'hislam made shiny, that when you're teaching, it's different. And so combining it all, what's clear is that if the image is not made by the Jew and it's being used to teach, then it would be permitted. So basically you end up with we end up concluding with 3 possible situations. Either if it's made by others, you shouldn't make it, but if it's made by others and there are always people around you, so then that's not going to be an issue. Or it's made by others and it's in pieces, so you have to put it together. And so as a result, that's not going to be an issue because nobody's worshiping something that is put together. And then third is again, it needs to be made by somebody who's an idolater, not somebody who's not Jewish, and you're using it in order to teach. So any of those 3 situations, those are 3 different possible answers as to why Rabban Gamliel's situation would be permitted. Okay, and okay. So next, and we are
that there's shmirah alav, that he's the Nasi and there are people around him. That's some sort of shmirah, right?
Yes, exactly. Some sort of shmirah. It's sort of like, but it's similar to the fact that the shul, having the image in the shul is okay, even though the image itself might ordinarily be problematic. When it's in the shul, we're not worried because, the people are in public, and so nobody's going to start worshiping an idol in public. So Rav Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, again, we concluded by noting that actually Rav Shimon ben Gamliel said it's not every kind of a vessel that's problematic. It depends on whether it's mechubad or mevuza. Is it honorific to the item or is it not? So ezahu mechubadim, the ezahu mevuzan. What's considered dignified and what's not? So Amar Rav says mechubadim lamala min hamayim. If the image on the vessel is above where the water would hit if you filled the vessel, well, then that's going to be honoring of the image. But mevuzin lamata min hamayim. But if it's below the edge of the water, well, then you're covering the image with water, and so as a result, that's not very dignified to the image at all. So Ushmuel Amar, no, elu ve'elu mezuzin lehem. Anything that's like that, where you're using it on a regular basis, and that's all disrespectful to the image itself. Ela eluhain mechubadim. Here's what is dignified. Sh'al hashirin, if it's on a bracelet, al hanizamin, or on a nose ring, al hatabos, or on a ring. Meaning it's got to be a jewelry. It's got to be fancy. It's fancy schmancy. Then you're going to have to be worried about that's going to be an image that's problematic. And Tanya Kavasi Dishmuel.
Wait, we learned, I don't know, months ago, that it's one of the practices of the Goyim with their idols was to defecate on it or to vomit on it, and that was considered honorable action, and you didn't want to copy that. So here, it's almost contradictory when we're saying that it would be mevuzim to lower
excellent
the
point. But that was a particular idol. And so if you were to make that particular idol, you're right. But this context is about images of sun, moon, and dracon. And so as a result, when it comes to the sun, moon, and dracon, that is not the attitude that people take with respect to that. People are not going to worship it by defecating. And as a result, it's only, according to Shmuel, it's only when it's on a nice item that we're going to be worried. Otherwise, it's just to make the thing look nice. And in fact, that's our experience, at least certainly our experience today, is the vast majority of art and carvings, etc., are not made for worship. They're made to look nice. So, and indeed, again, there was a brisa that teaches like Shmuel, Mechubadim Sha'al HaSherin V'al Nizamin V'al Tabos. That's what it is when it's mechubad. That is mevuzin sha'al hayoros v'al hakum kamasin v'al machame chamin. It's for things that are on pots, on kettles, on water warmers. Meaning, if you're going to use the item as opposed to use the item for decoration or for beautifying yourself, and you're using it, that's not going to be something. V'sha'al hasidinin, and if it's on a sheet, v'al hamat pakos, or on a towel, that's all commonly used. It's only for design. It's only for to make it look nice, and it's not going to be problematic. Okay, so we said in the last Mishnah, we'll just do this next Mishnah, and then we'll conclude, and we'll pick up, God willing, tomorrow. We said in the last Mishnah that you can throw it into the Yam HaMelech, and that's how you get rid of it. Rabbi Yossi Omer, shochek v'zora laruach. You can grind it up and throw it into the wind. Omata layam, or then you can cast it into the sea. So Amru lo, they said to him, meaning the rabbi said to him, Avhuna sezeba. 1 second. If you grind it up and scatter it to the wind, you're going to create fertilizer. Shnei as it says, Lo yidbak biyadcha me'uma min acherim. Nothing of the banned property shall connect to your hand. And so, as a result, that is not going to be sufficient. You are worried that people are still going to benefit from it. So you can't just throw it to the wind. So this conversation is something, sorry for not scrolling, this conversation is going to be between Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis, is going to be continued with the Gemara. But for that conversation, please stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. Wishing everybody a wonderful
We're talking about
day.
I'm just thinking, we're talking about making images here. They're drawing pictures or making or making sculptures or whatever, so forth. Now, my question is, today, and today I mean the last 20 years, there are laboratories that are actually cloning animals. So they're making these animals, sheep and so forth, for years now, or a different and they're designed hopefully for medical purposes. But are they actually creating? Is that problematic for them to actually create? Whether it be where we talked about the 4 animals or the 3, 4 animals on the chariot, is that a problem then for them to clone these animals?
I would not think so because none of those animals have 4 faces. So I don't think that that's going to be a problem. The only problem is making sort of the 4-faced creature. And of course, one of those faces is human. So I don't think that that's going to be the problem. I'm sure there are other issues that are involved in cloning that are way beyond the issues of Avodah Zarah. So I wouldn't think that that's going to be the thing that we would be concerned about.